at Penji is our commitment to helping those who are making sacrifices to help others. Thank you to those making a difference in your community. We are currently accepting applications for Penji for nonprofits. If you know a nonprofit or you are one yourself, head over to penji.co and click on Penji for Good at the bottom of the website to learn how to qualify. If you are listening to this podcast and are not a nonprofit, well, welcome. Become a customer by using the custom coupon code within the podcast show notes. Proceeds of all sales goes directly back to the nonprofit from this interview. Now, back to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to You Can Find Purpose. This is a podcast where we share inspiring tales of passion, resilience, and community spirit. And you guys know me. I'm your host, Daniela. I'm Penji's partnership coordinator. And I'm super excited because today we have a really cool guest, Tracy Ryan from First Responder Therapy Dogs. Hi, Tracy. How are you doing? Hi, Daniela. Thank you so much for having us. I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you today on the podcast. Before we start, though, I do have a small game prepared for you. Sure. Kind of just to break the ice, warm us up, right? Your website. For people who are not familiar, First Responder Therapy Dogs, obviously they have therapy dogs. And I looked at some of the names that you guys have there, the dogs, and I came up with a few fake ones. And I just want you to see, I want to see if you remember all of the names of the dogs. So I'm going to say like some names of dogs, and I want you to tell me if they're from your nonprofit or if they're just made up names that I have. Okay. Okay. So the first one is Maverick. Maverick is ours. Yes. Good. Sir Snuggles a lot. Sir Snuggles a lot, not ours. Yes, correct. Tank. Tank is ours. Yes, correct. Butterscotch. No, we do not have a butterscotch to my knowledge. Yes, good. Ruger? No. Ruger, maybe? Is it pronounced Ruger? R-U-G-E-R? Oh, Ruger. I think we do have a Ruger. Yes. Yes, you do have a Ruger. And then last one, Tofu. Tofu. I don't think we have a Tofu. No Tofu. Okay, yeah. So you clearly are the expert here. You passed the test. So we have officially, gotten warmed up, and now we know that you really truly do know what you're doing. But everybody watching who is not familiar with what you guys do, what you're all about, please tell us all about it and what you guys would like our audience to know. We're not
Sure. No, absolutely. So First Responder Therapy Dogs is a national nonprofit. We actually started out in the California area, and we are currently in 46 states and have a little over 400 teams that are certified with us. We provide assistance and mental health support to first responders across the country through the use of trained and certified therapy dogs. So really, our mission is a pretty simple one in some respect, but we take our dogs, and when I say a therapy dog team, that's one handler and one canine. So the canine goes through different assessments to make sure that they're a good fit with our organization. The handler also does some different things to make sure they're a good fit with our organization. Once they are certified, they're able to visit everyone from firefighters to police officers to dispatchers to EMS personnel. We have dogs that visit hospital settings. We have dogs that visit search and rescue. We have dogs that visit wildland base campfires. So depending upon the area that they reside, it can fluctuate a little bit in terms of who they're seeing, but they're able to go out and they really provide the therapy dog support to the first responders while they're on shift most of the time. So it's a wonderful break in the day of most first responders. They genuinely love the use of the dogs. Most people have a dog at home, and I say all the time, your own dog can be your own therapy dog in a way. They're excited to see you when you come in the door. They're sad when you leave, and our dogs kind of do the same thing, but at their workplace, which is a little bit different. And it's something so simple, but it genuinely brightens people's day immensely when we enter the building. And so they love it.
No, for sure. I remember my friend told me a story one time of how when COVID happened, she ended up having to do her lockdown by herself in her house. And it was really depressing for her. And she told me literally the only thing that was sort of keeping her going, because I think like after a prolonged period of time where you're not speaking to anyone, it can get a little bit overwhelming. She told me that what had kind of kept her motivated to like wake up and not lose track of her life was that she had a dog, and that her dog required for her to like wake up and feed it and then take the dog for a walk. And like, the dog needed a routine and stuff. And that was like the only thing that would keep her sane. So I could totally see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
State. It makes sense. Yeah. Tracy, I'm super interested in a lot of the stuff that you guys do, but I'm actually curious to ask you how did the organization start? Like, what inspired the foundation of this?
Absolutely, yeah. So our organization started with one dog. She's named Karath. She's 6 years old currently, or almost 6 years old. She lives out in California. Her handler is Heidi Carmen, and she is the founder and executive director of First Responder Therapy Dogs. And Karath's story is a very unique one. She actually started in guide dogs with the blind, and they don't call it failing out of that job. They call it career changing, but she was just too friendly. She was too friendly to be with that job. So Heidi was able to adopt her, and Heidi started doing therapy work with Karath in a hospital setting. And from there, Karath was able to actually meet quite a few first responders, and Heidi really started noticing Karath's love for a uniform, her love, and just kind of natural affection towards people coming into the hospital. So Heidi very quickly started to bring her to fire stations that were local, and the story kind of unfolds there. We started very, very small. So in 2021, there was one or two teams. There was a very small amount of teams. They were all California based. And then when I certified, I was in 2022 with my first dog, Sparky. We were the 12th team across the country. So it was still predominantly West Coast based at that time. They had just started doing a formal certification process. Sparky and I were the first team to go through that official certification process, and the first team on the East Coast. So since 2022, when we were at 12 teams across the country, we are now at over 400 in 46 states. So we have grown exponentially. And to be honest with you, a lot of the people that we've expanded to are either first responders themselves or connected to the community in some capacity, whether it be a spouse or someone that they know. And a lot of it has been word of mouth. They'll see us at events, they'll see us through social media. And the amount of people that inquire about our organization on a daily basis is just so wonderful. We field questions and things constantly from people in terms of how can they get involved, how can they certify with us, because they love the mission. And it's one of those things that when I was actually looking, when I first started training my dog Sparky, I knew she had a lot of unique flair. I like to call it a lot of unique flair. And she was one that I didn't see her in a library setting. I didn't see her in a nursing home setting. And my husband's a firefighter. So anytime you're volunteering and taking time away from you and your family, you want it to be something special that means something to you, that's connected to you and your family in some capacity. So when I ever came across first responder therapy dogs, I immediately reached out at that point, because I just thought it sounded like such a good fit for Sparky as well as for myself. And it has honestly been one of the most unbelievable experiences that I've been a part of since we started doing what we do. It's something so special, but it really, I would love to say that there was a ton of thought put into it, but it started with really just the direction of one dog. And from there, the thought has really exploded. So, she was able to kind of identify something that Karath was very strong in and something that she seemed to really love to do. And she was able to create this group that, like I said, has provided support across the country now at this point. And it's just such a special thing to have been able to see from kind of the ground up.
That's amazing. What I'm curious about is when you are, trying to train these dogs, my experience with my dog is that she gets really stressed out very easily if she's put in situations that are outside of her comfort zone. She, like my dog, she will be okay with meeting people, but for example, other animals, really bad. We take her out of the house so we'll take her on normal walks to like the places that she knows and she's smelling and she's having fun. But if we go to like a mall and I take her because it's pet friendly, she will not stay still. She will just want to smell everything in that mall and she looks like she's overstimulated. So I feel like it's really difficult with her to kind of, and I mean, like we never really trained her to be there. She's just always been a house dog. And I think COVID also made her just like even more just house-ish. But I'm curious how you guys have handled this because I like, at least from my experience, that's just how I feel like the nature of dogs is, like they're so like fickle. I'm not fickle. That's not even the word, but delicate. And I know that like bigger dogs are different because I have like a small dog. She's like this big. So maybe it's because of like what kind of dog they are. But how do you guys actually train them to sort of be able to interact in different settings? Talk to different people, do all of the things that they have to do without it being a stressful situation for them.
So it's interesting. I do think, just like people, I think some dogs are definitely just born to be more acclimated to the work than others. I think, it's interesting. So both of my dogs, I now have 2 certified first responder therapy dog teams. My oldest Sparky is going to be 6 and my youngest just turned 2. They could not be more polar opposite in terms of personality. But what they both have had is the love for other people's attention. So it is interesting because from the time that they were 8 weeks old when I got them as puppies, I started working with specifically my second one because I kind of knew what I was doing at that point. The first one is always just like your own children. The first one's kind of a guinea pig in that sense. You don't really exactly know what you're doing with it. So getting them involved in training immediately as soon as they were old enough, that was one piece, kind of socializing them. I remember, though, for my first dog specifically, she was much more heightened to sounds and smells and just stimulus in general. And we spent days and days and days going into stores like Lowe's or Home Depot that are pet friendly, just literally walking around the perimeter and getting used to the sounds, the smells, the chaos of it, And it took me a lot longer to work through some of that stuff with her than it did my second one, who has been born a laid back. I call him my sloth dog, but he is just a laid back, doesn't really get fazed by much around him in terms of stimulus. So he was a much different dog to work with for that. So for every dog, the process is a little bit different. They all have their kind of quirky sides where you do have to kind of just work through it from a training perspective. But what I will say is all the dogs love the job. And that isn't necessarily always the right fit for a dog. And one of the parts we have 2 pieces that are important from a certification process from our organization. One is that the dog has to pass what's called the Canine Good Citizenship Test, which is kind of like the SATs for dog training. It's like a standardized way. And they can do that with any trainer that's certified to teach to that level. And it really is just basic obedience. It's them being able to control themselves in different settings. It's them being able to navigate other dogs being around, things of that nature. And then being able to do behaviors that you need them to do with stimulus around them. So once they're able to pass that, that's, like I said, just kind of a standard measure in terms of their overall obedience. The second piece, though, is more of a behavioral observation. And that's going to be at settings like a firehouse or at settings where like trash trucks are going by or a train is going by. Again, to make sure that from a noise perspective, our setting is very different than if you were in a nursing home or a school or a dentist's office or something along those lines where it's a very controlled setting. Our setting is at a station where sirens are going off, or they're getting a call and a ambulance is coming in, or at dispatches, there are high squealing tones that go off throughout the shift. So it definitely requires the dog to be a little bit more comfortable in those settings. And like I said, it's always a work in progress. I'll say, even from my perspective, one funny story that I'll just share from a training perspective. So my first dog, Sparky, again, once he even certified, we did a lot of outreach. We tried to get ourselves out there to as many events as possible so that we could explain what we do and why it's important. And one of the events that we went to in our area was a big stair climb that first responders attended. And it was actually at the TD Garden where the Celtics play. So it was a huge venue. And I could not have been more proud of her. We went up huge elevators. We went up, it was just so much noise and stimulus. And until you really are in that setting, you don't exactly know how they're going to operate. Like, that you've done your work to get to that point, but you're not exactly sure. So she had done so well, and I was so proud of her. And then all of a sudden, the Bruins mascot, which is like a big, huge stuffed bear, came out behind her, and she made a noise, and it was like a noise of like pure, like, I have no idea what that big stuffed thing is behind me, and I don't think I like it. And I remember looking at her, and we immediately had to work through that. But we had never trained for mascots, so it's like one of those things that you are constantly, when you're
not expecting it. Yeah.
It's not expecting it. And so when you're bringing your dog out in any capacity, right, there's always stimulus that, like you said, right, maybe wasn't there the last time you went on the same walk, or maybe you went a slightly different route, or there's a slightly different smell, and you do kind of have to navigate as you go. But for our dogs, like I said, the thing that bonds them all, and we have everything from a 5-pound toy poodle to a 175-pound wolfhound, a huge, ginormous one, and everything in between. So we don't have any breeding specifications, but really what all the dogs have in common is they love the attention that they get from other people. And I think some dogs, most people who have their own dogs, they love their own attention, right? So when you come in the door, they love you, and they love you more than anything in the world. But if you were to have them greet someone out that they didn't know, they may not like that the same way. They may not like to be pet by somebody else. They may not like that interaction. For our dogs, that's kind of their bread and butter. Like, that is why they wake up in the morning when they put that vest on. And I'll say, my dogs are very vest driven. So they know when that vest goes on that they are working. They know what the job is. They know the routine of the job. And they love it. They look forward to it. The minute I pull their vest out, they are like waiting for it. They're ready to go. So it's one of those things that it does have to be the right fit. And I think for some behavior, you can most certainly work with trainers and train through it, but they have to have that ingrained love for people. That's something that's a much harder thing to teach. And again, you want them to enjoy it because you want it to be fun for them too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious if you guys ever faced any pushback with like the mission, because I think I feel like dogs, like service dogs, for example, like for like people who are blind or who have disabilities, are very common, and they're kind of accepted in society as like something that's helpful. I think the concept of therapy dogs is a little bit newer. At least from like my experience. So I might be wrong. It probably exists since like forever, but I mean, like, this idea of sort of like introducing this as a concept and a thing and something that can help. And I wonder if throughout the process of this whole development, has there been any pushback from people, or any skepticism, or have you had to sort of back everything with what you do with kind of like any kind of like research, or like I'm curious to how that has happened.
Yeah, so I would say on average, we actually have had less pushback than what you'd almost expect. But I do think specifically different parts of the country, I think, are different at different levels it's really more the connection of the mental health side of things. So, specifically in the first responder community, one of the hardest challenges over the last however many decades has been you're dealing with a group of individuals who are perceived as extremely tough, perceived as people that do not discuss emotion, that do not talk about feelings, that do not get fazed by things that bother them. And that is unfortunately a stereotype of the population that has very slowly kind of started to chip away a little bit. I think we, through research and through statistics and through, different organizations that have tracked suicide rates and substance abuse rates in the population of first responders, at the end of the day, I think we are all coming to the realization really fast that there is some major trauma that's experienced by that group of individuals due to their job. And they're not immune to the mental health sides of that trauma. And I think the only pushback that we have had occasionally is the concept of therapy. And even in my area, so, California has been a little bit more progressive, I'd say, as a state. Like, they've had station dogs longer than I would say other areas. Service dogs, obviously, like you said, have been in play for a long time. I will say therapy dogs have been actually around for a long time, but not specific to the first responder community. Dogs, way back in like the historical days with firefighters, they had Dalmatians at the station. Their role was slightly different, but they actually provided that same therapeutic response that we do. But their role was more to keep horses, under wraps and protect the station and that kind of thing. Same with police departments. They brought in canines, again, for different jobs, but they serviced the department in a similar way than what we're doing, but that wasn't their purpose, right? So whenever we talk about the term therapy dog, they're definitely, and I'll say even in my area, when I first started and I would call a department, there were some departments that had already heard about it. They had known about it. They had been thinking about it, and they were fully open from the get-go. There were other departments that I would be on the phone with someone and say the term therapy dog, and there'd be a very long pause in the conversation. And I'd have to explain to them what that actually meant, because in their eyes, and again, rightfully so, they were expecting me to come in and start talking about, counseling methods. And that is not our job, right? We are going in, we are making conversation, but the dog does the work. And that's once we are able to get into a station, 9 times out of 10, they don't have any other questions. They see what happens when we come in. They see the response that we get. People love it. And it becomes honestly a very, very routine part of their station. And that's great. We do have departments, though, that aren't as open-minded to it every now and then. And it's one of those things that we do kind of try to meet them where they're at. And sometimes what we'll do is we will see them at different events and we'll kind of chip away at, through those type of experiences. Even some departments that I don't visit regularly, they'll reach out and they'll have us come to open houses and things like that. So we are able to kind of make connections in a way that, again, is where people are at, where comfort levels are at. And I think the nice part is it's just getting the terminology more, out there. Even from a police department side of things, a lot of police stations are now getting comfort dogs, which is just a slightly different term. It's basically a working therapy dog. And all of that stuff is helping make progress in terms of our mission, in terms of what we are advocating for. And like I said, it gives just more exposure. If you talk to somebody that worked at like a children's hospital, for example, or a lot of school systems, if you said the term therapy dog, they have had therapy dogs for decades now at this point, and that's become a very routine part of their experience. I think we're just a little bit behind that in terms of the first responder community. But I think we're making a lot of headway. And I will say that is one of the benefits to social media. Is you're able to connect with departments in a different way, and they're able to see kind of what we do, how we do it, and get a little bit more information before having to commit and before, we come in the door.
Yeah, I think for foundations and organizations like yours, social media is definitely like an asset for marketing, for getting that name out there, for getting sort of that popularity, because it's also like it's easy to reach a lot of people in the community where you're working. And I think you're also kind of like doing it in a way where it's cost effective, which I think is a big concern when it comes to nonprofits. Most of the time, you want to put your money more into your mission. So I think, like you said, like social media is a great way to do it. And I definitely like, I find it really interesting because I feel like the concept of therapy dogs is so new, but at the same time, I feel like you said, people have been doing this for ages. I think the idea of having a pet dog, it's kind of like that, because like most people find a lot of comfort in their dogs. And it's just because it's not like a therapy dog that you're getting from a certain place does not mean that the dog does not do the same thing.
100%
for you, right?
Yep. Well, and there's now so much science now that's connecting. So they have done studies, and again, not specific to first responders, but specific to just people in general. It lowers the stress hormones. It raises the happy hormones, so to speak. And they've done a ton of studies that have shown that time and time again, that just simply petting a dog, even for any animal, honestly, for 10, 15 minutes, it creates a whole psychological, physiological effect in your system for the better. So like I said, it's such a simple tool, and we consider ourselves, that's kind of what we consider ourselves, as an additional tool that can be accessed. We're not necessarily going to solve every problem with a dog, but in conjunction with other methods, in conjunction with additional supports, and just as more of a routine kind of add-in, that's where we see our effects most useful.
No, I totally get that. I feel like being a dog owner for me is simultaneously like, I love my dog with all my heart, but it's also really, like, I would say a kind of emotionally, I'm so emotionally invested. Like, I used to see people who had pets be so upset when they died or like when stuff happened. And I thought, you're just so ridiculous. Like, yeah, it's kind of sad that the dog died, but like, whatever. Until I became a dog owner myself. And now I feel like it's like, if I go out and I know that the dog is alone in the house, I'm thinking about coming back because I know it's so hard for her to be left alone. And, like, I've become so attached, like, emotionally to this dog. So, yeah, I totally see where all of this comes from, because I feel that with mine. Like, I feel like she always looks forward to seeing me in the mornings, and that just, like, moves me.
Oh, it is. And like I said, they love you so unconditionally. And it's funny. We obviously visit a lot of different stations and a lot of different locations in our area. Specifically, myself and my dogs are not connected directly to a department. So we visit a lot of different departments and stations. And sometimes we'll see people, at events or outside of their station. And what is hysterical to me, and again, sometimes it's almost like you feel like you've walked in with a unicorn that nobody has ever seen, and at the end of the day, it is a dog, and most people have them, and people will like flock. They come flying over to her. And again, most of the time, and I do the same thing, they don't even make eye contact with me. They just get right down into her face and oh, Sparky, I missed you so much, and it's just hysterical to me because, it's one of those things that, to be fair, I don't know a lot of the people that we visit. I don't know a lot of their names. And they don't know a lot of times my name. They know her, though, and they know my second dog, Blaze, and they remember them, and they immediately call them by name. And it's just a cute bond. It's such a special thing to be able to witness because, like I said, it's not something that is so out of this world that you're like, oh my gosh, you've walked in and this is the only thing that people could talk about. It is simply a dog, but they make such unbelievable connections with the people that they interact with, and they treat those people like your dog treats you at home. And the beauty of that is that they feel special. They feel loved. They feel complete in that moment, in whatever capacity they kind of were missing or lacking something. That's what that dog is able to do for them. And you can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their mannerisms. You can see it in how they interact with the dog. And it is, I say all the time, holding the leash has been something so special because you watch moments that you wish you honestly could could capture them all on film because some of the moments are just so special between the person and the dog.
For sure. And I think that's a great note to end on. Really sweet. And guys, please, if anything that resonated with you today about what we talked about, go visit Tracy's website. I will add the links to this in the description. Do you want to tell our audience where else they can find you guys or where else they can connect?
Absolutely. So we are online, firstrespondertherapydogs.org. We've got a very comprehensive website. If you're looking to certify, if you're looking to donate or help out, or if you're just looking for additional information, we have all of that there. We are also on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at First Responder Therapy Dogs. Again, we try to capture moments that are appropriate to capture, obviously. Some moments that we are a part of are not something we would ever put on social media, but the pictures that we show really, like I said, capture a moment between a person and a dog. And for that reason, honestly, even if it's just to look at some cute dog pictures, it'll put a smile on your face. I can guarantee you that.
Awesome. Yeah. Then I will be adding the links to the social media and to your website on the description, guys. You guys know you can donate. You can get certified. You can just see what's up on all of these sites. And you should remember to subscribe, like, follow us, interact with the video as much as you can. Thank you so much, Tracy. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Tracy, for being on the podcast today. It was so great to have you.
No, thank you so much. We appreciate the thought and the time. Absolutely.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here too. And everybody else, I will see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Unified Purpose, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest. And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.